Last night at a Young Republicans event where Clay Travis was speaking, I embarrassed myself a little bit by making a one sentence comment. And I'll tell you the story. Then I want to ask for forgiveness, pay some compliments, run through some facts, and then finally ask a favor of Mr. Travis. So last night, I got invited by a friend of mine to go to a Young Republicans event, and I think they have been doing a great job with that club. More on that later. And Clay Travis was speaking. I didn't know who Clay Travis was. I know that sounds crazy. I'd never listened to his show or a podcast because I keep up with state and local stuff because that's what you depend on me for. I have very little bandwidth for anything else. I have friends that love him and have talked about him, but I didn't know who he was or really anything about him or what he was going to speak on. What I did not expect is for 70% of his presentation to be about COVID. And it was good. He talked about how it affected his kids. He talked about how many young men especially, sports is all that keeps them in school. And the damage that COVID did and the fact that people just stood around and didn't do anything about it. And I don't know if Mr. Travis knew, but he was like pushing every single of my buttons because COVID for me, because I quit my job basically for almost like a year to fight it with my own money and time to get the special sessions that rolled it all back. So I'm sitting there and it's just like somebody just ripped a Band-Aid off an old wound. And he said, basically, like, we really need to not forget this. I mean, obviously he's talking about it 5 years later. It's about 70% of his speech as far as I can recall. Like, it's a big deal. And right about the time he said that, I said, yeah, and a lot of the Republicans who did it to us are in this very room tonight. And he said, well, that's above my pay grade, and he moved on, which is what a good speaker should do. But the statement was true. Hardly anyone that was in government at the time, club leaders, elected officials, many of which are still in office, hardly ever said a peep during COVID. They just let it happen. And many of them pushed it, like our own mayor, John Coppinger, at the time, Republican county mayor. And so I got the words out of my mouth, and I was just boiling. And I don't know where it came from. And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, I probably shouldn't have said that, probably not in this audience, probably not at this time, but it was true. And I would say, as a compliment, if you're a good preacher, you're going to get some remarks from the congregation, unless they're dead, or unless they just don't care about what you're talking about. And so I'd like to apologize to Mary Frances Hoots because people did not come there to hear my comments, and to Mr. Travis and my wife, who I thoroughly embarrassed, and probably my friends. But it came from a source of agreement, and it came from a source of, no, we shouldn't forget. And so hats off to you, Mr. Travis, for getting that unvote response out of me. And so I'd like to go through a few facts here, because when you hear Republicans talk about COVID in Tennessee, and then at the end of this, I'm going to ask a favor. It's almost like Biden did it, and we rescued everybody from it. I mean, that's how Republicans who are in leadership currently, that were also in leadership when COVID happened, talk about COVID on the campaign trail, and people shake their head like it's true. And it's not true. Let's start off. In March of 2020, Bill Lee uses emergency powers that were originally delegated for national emergencies, like weather emergencies, tornadoes, etc., and applied it to COVID. It's not what it was supposed to be applied to, but nonetheless, restrictions on mass gatherings and a coordinated response. In March of 2020, Lee urges congregations to quit meeting. First time in all of American history, in Tennessee history, that a governor would encourage people not to go worship God. And what happened after? And to limit gatherings. I have to wonder, like, how many churches shut down and never reopened? How many people never heard the gospel because of this? Safer at home order. This is April of 2020. This is the good one. Closure of non-essential businesses. I think it's pretty essential when somebody's using their business to feed their family and they've spent their life working on it. But people that had really good lobbies up in Nashville got to keep theirs open. Grocery store retailers, big box retailers, but not mom and pops, not small little businesses, not all kinds of businesses. You're not essential. And the Democrats accused him of selective enforcement. It should have been the Republicans saying this is not even constitutional at any level, state or federal. In 2020, this is funny, of April, and this is when I got out on the Market Street Bridge and started protesting and people thought I'd lost my mind. Perfectly vindicated on every point. Human Services allows churches, gyms, and nonprofits to register as emergency temporary child care facilities to support essential workers. So we're going to close some businesses down. We're going to tell you you can't worship, but if you can go work for the corporations in Boxland, and you can watch their kids so they can go make money for our buddies in the corporations, we'll let you stay open. Not for your intended purpose of making people healthy, either physically or spiritually, but so you can watch the kids so people can go to corporate America and make their money. Because we've shut down the daycare centers, the government schools. In April of 2020, we began reopening, prioritizing retail and restaurants over gyms and entertainment venues. It's like, okay, let's just randomly ruin some people's livelihood and their source of enjoyment, and let's let others open. I mean, just illogical, makes no sense. Did you know that according to the Center Square, between January of 2020 and March 2021, 24.4% of small businesses went out of business in Tennessee? 1 in 4. We have never had a governor. We've never had a legislature that stood so idly by and did nothing to create this much economic damage in the small business community. Not in Tennessee history. All preventable, avoidable, shouldn't have ever happened. In November of 2020, Governor Lee and Wendy Long of the Tennessee Hospital Association, which gets whatever it wants, just about. Hospital bills are through the roof, services in the crapper, and we got places like Memorial trying to hide illegal aliens because they'll make a few extra dollars about it. I mean, big medical is not on your side. They urged Tennesseans to not meet with their families on Thanksgiving because going through this catastrophe after they shut down your church, your gym, and your business, we definitely don't need to get together and thank God for our blessings and people that hardly ever see their family but once a year. We need to shut that down because that's not essential or important. Avoid large groups. I had to move my national conference for painting contractors down to Florida from Tennessee because it was the only place I felt like likely this can go forward. It was the only person in the industry that had an event that year. He finally has a special session on education because he's like, oh, you mean if we send all these kids home and they're not in the classroom, that there'll be some educational fallout? What idiot couldn't have seen this? The session prioritized funding educator support. Basically, like, let's throw a bunch of money at this and just keep doing what we've already done, which didn't work. Lee signs a law banning critical race theory in public schools. This is probably a good thing that came out of COVID, but it goes to show you how sleepy Republicans are. I mean, Republicans have been in charge at this point of the school system for somewhat 15, 12 years. Like majority, it's a super majority. Like the only reason we found out this crap was going on in schools because you shut them down and forced us to teach our kids at home, and we see these radical teachers and this radical course curriculum coming through the internet instead of privately being taught racism in the classroom. That's bad management. Republican lawmakers criticized the GOP-appointed Michelle Fiskus, this is in June and July of 2021, of basically encouraging teens to get vaccinated with God knows what without their parents' permission. Fiskus, the top vaccine official, is fired because she's basically a salesperson for Big Pharma, which is kind of like what the government is. And in fact, they made the health department stop pushing vaccine events, removing the department's logo from vaccines. Imagine running a company where you can make the government force people to take your product, and then you just give the politicians a bunch of PAC money. I'd like to get in on that. I remember getting calls from the health department under John Coppinger, who allowed it, and Billy allowed it, doing all this contact tracing, and this person calls me. And it's not even the person, right? He said, Mr. Ellis Smith had COVID, and you have, I'm not Ellis Smith, buddy. I said, don't ever call here again. It's like somebody who knew somebody who knew somebody had COVID, you got to stay in your house for 14 days. No, thank you. So here's when things started happening. And in 2021, health department restrictions limit contact tracing, as they well should have to begin with. I mean, that's like Gestapo style stuff. Look, I really thought we were going to lose our nation during this because we lost our mind and our common sense and our principles and our oath of office. In August of 2021, and this is because me, Gary Humble of Tennessee Stands, Andy Ogles at the time, and a whole bunch of grassroots people were up at the freaking Capitol protesting and raising heck and blowing up the phone lines. Republicans didn't do what they did to reform COVID because it was the right thing to do. They did it because they smelled the political winds blowing. And Cameron Sexton was the first one, to his credit, to actually be receptive to the thought that they had stepped in a big pile of doo-doo and they needed to undo it. So they started the process of undoing not what COVID did, but what they did through their own clinging to Bill Lee's coattails and hiding behind his skirt and not doing their job as two separate branches of government. You know, during COVID, I felt like I didn't even have a House or a state rep. I had Patsy Hazelwood, thank goodness that lady's gone, and Todd Gardenhire. Wouldn't listen to me. Wouldn't listen to me on anything. They all turned out to be wrong. And they didn't stand up to Governor Lee during any of this. Neither the leadership in the House or the leadership in the Senate. It took everything coming to a boiling point and for so much data to come back saying, hey, this probably ain't going the way you think it is for them to do this. But he did do it. It was signed by 73 House Republicans led by Speaker Cameron Sexton, urged that a special session be called basically to undo what the Republicans had done to us. Lee issues an executive order allowing parents to opt children out of school mask mandates. This is in April of 2021, or August of 2021 rather, which means he let them be masked forcibly for well over a year. Imagine the psychological and educational damage that did. Of all the things that Bill Lee should have been responsible for protecting, it should have been the kids, and that's one of the groups that he let down the most. So they have a special session in October, and they ban school and local government mask mandates. It's a good thing, except in extreme cases. I mean, either the masks work or they don't. If the case is extreme, it shouldn't matter. But again, this is the way these folks think. Contact tracing prohibits local educational agencies, charter schools, and public institutions from implementing COVID-19 contact tracing, which was just a huge boondoggle. By the time they called me, it had been so far out, it wouldn't have been helpful, and they thought I was the wrong person. That was my experience with contact tracing. Very effective. Only the government. Quarantine restrictions limits quarantine authority to health commissioner, preventing local entities from mandating quarantines. Why do we quarantine healthy people? Makes no sense, but requires hospitals to allow visitors if patients test negative, show no symptoms. Imagine how many people died in nursing homes and hospitals at the hands of corporations and the government, alone, by themselves, never having any closure with the one that they've lost. Terrible. November 2021, business groups like the Tennessee Chamber of Commerce criticized the legislation as anti-business. Those are two organizations that have very few conservative perspectives. They don't see red, they don't see blue, they only see green. Our paymasters might lose some money. I don't care who loses what freedom, but our paymasters may lose some money. Green means a lot more than red up in Nashville. And then finally, in November of 2021, Senate Majority Leader Jack Johnson wants to remove the sunset clause to keep these permanently put in place. Now, they completely left out medical workers and federal workers during a lot of this for medical freedom. I don't know that they have any freedoms now. They should. So this is the story of COVID in Tennessee. I left a lot of stuff out. But none of this was done by Democrats. None of it. They were not in power. We have a supermajority. They can conduct business in the state of Tennessee if a Democrat never shows up. Do whatever they want to, just about. And so I think it's important for Republicans to remember it's about the platform, it's about the policies, it's about the Constitution, it's not about the party. Party's great when the party functions. Republicans are great when Republicans function, but often they don't. So here is my ask, Mr. Travis. If you have watched this to the end, I doubt you have, please get involved in state and local politics. And by involved, I don't mean just showing up and speaking at events. I'll give you an example. Last night, you said, I'm just so excited and grateful that the Daily Wire is in Tennessee. And I am too. I mean, I think it's great. They've probably got lots of employees. They're probably nice people. They're probably adding to the tax base. Great. But, you know, when you listen to folks like Rush, when you listen to Ben Shapiro, you listen to Matt Walsh, you listen to, I'm sure, your show, you ask people to get involved at the state and local level, but I've not seen any national media person get involved at the state policy level since I have been following things starting in 2020, except for one time. And it just goes to show you how much influence you could have. Matt Walsh called out Vanderbilt Medical for chopping the body parts off of kids in sex changes. And Jack Johnson and William Lambert and all the leadership ran out and they passed a bill. Why? Because they were publicly embarrassed that they'd let it go on so long. Nationally calling out state and local leaders has a huge impact. Now, what you don't know, Mr. Travis, is that same bill had been brought by Janice Bowling 2 years prior, and Republican leadership killed it and laughed at it, even though they knew it was happening. How many kids got hurt during the interim? I don't know. One's too many. It took the public embarrassment that Matt Walsh put on leadership for them to run out into the limelight, not give Miss Bowling any credit, or the people that brought the bill originally that they had thumbed their nose at and laughed at, but run out in the spotlight and grab that 15 minutes because of a couple of days of offhand remarks from a national media pundit. So my appeal to you, anybody watching this that's watched it to the end, speak up, even if it's uncomfortable. Maybe don't do it like I did it last night. There's probably a better time and a place. But it's better to speak up even if it's a little discomforting than not to. If people had spoken up, many people who shared the opinions that I had during COVID but were just altogether too timid and cowed socially to say a word. If more people spoke up, we would have better policy, we would have better politicians. But we are so fearful of what our peers think. It gets worse as you get older. You think peer pressure, we always talk about it like it's something that's teenage angst. I'm telling you what, teenagers and kids bend a lot less to peer pressure than grown adults do. Far less. And so, again, to the event organizers, I apologize for being in the peanut gallery, but I hope you can see after listening to these facts and in my position of where I had to come from and what we had to endure as a state, that we don't need to forget. And I believe, in closing, that the folks that were in power should be held accountable. Personally, financially, legally. That'll never happen, but they could at least issue an apology. We got it wrong. Sorry. Big mistake, big boo-boo here. You know, put a bunch of people out of business, shut down a bunch of churches, emotionally scarred folks that are still wearing masks in their car driving around. You see the people. They are psychologically damaged goods now. Kids too. So, Mr. Travis, please pay attention. Subscribe to TennesseeConservativeNews.com. Skim the headlines once a day. Something might pique your interest, and if it does, pick up the phone. I pick up the phone and say, hey, well, what do you know about this? I'll tell you what I know, and if I don't know anything, say I don't know anything. Same thing with candidates. If you're going to get behind somebody, I can send you all the information you want on the record, voting record. If you're going to attach your name and your likeness to a candidate, by all means, make sure that it matches the brand, right, of being super conservative. That's all I got. Thank you so much for coming to speak. Again, sorry for the remarks last night, but it was like a primal scream. I didn't scream it, but it felt like it inside. But sometimes, your emotions get the better of you. But if you didn't have the drive, if you didn't have the fire in your belly as a conservative, you couldn't get out of the bed in the morning to do this stuff. So sometimes it's a blessing, other times it's a curse. Guys, thank you for walking down this memory lane of COVID, lest we forget. Until next time, it's Brandon Lewis with the Tennessee Conservative News, signing off. Take care.